So I want to show you one of my favorite activities for using this deck of cards, the Elements deck, for mapping out a project, whether it's a community initiative, a venture that you're working on, a nonprofit, a new event or an experience coming up. This is a really helpful activity for just getting some clarity on what some of the first steps you might want to take with. And so you can use this with or without the deck of cards. This just is a helpful tool to assist in the process. This deck of cards consists of a bunch of elements to consider when thinking about launching a project, right? So there's all these different elements. They're organized into different categories based on what area you might be focusing on with your project. And so all kinds of different elements. And the way that I like to use these, and you can do this as a personal activity just for yourself, or you can also do this with a group of individuals. But I will take a deck of cards, put them beside me, and on a big sheet of paper, draw a simple 2x2 grid like this. If you're doing this individually, you can just do it with one. If you've got a group of participants, you can have everybody do this. So give everybody a big sheet of paper. It could be a flip chart piece of paper. It could be 8x11. I'm using 11x17. And then on your piece of paper, you're going to label it as clear and unclear, and then important versus not important. And then when I have a group of participants, what I'll do is I often like to do a speed dating type of activity. So I'll give a handful of cards to one group. I'll then find another spot in the room, put another handful of cards for them, and so forth. So each pairing, this would be like a speed networking, they would each have a different deck of cards that they're working with. And with them and their partner, each individual would have a Post-it notepad and a marker. And then with their partner, they have about 5 or so minutes to flip through the cards. They don't need to go through all of them, but flip through one at a time. So things like materials, current situation, external validation. And then with them and their partner, they would just talk through, okay, let's focus on this one. For my project, is it important for me to find ways to get external validation, or is that not important? And depending on that, how clear am I about that in its current state versus unclear? Maybe I'm in an early stage where it's not really that important for me, so the card's somewhere more down here, and I'm kind of unclear about it, but it's not really that important. So that card would live down here. So if you're doing this with a group of individuals, they would just take that card and write external validation on their Post-it note and then put it somewhere on their sheet. Depending on how big your paper is, you can use small Post-it notes or big Post-it notes. And then they would just keep going through their deck of cards, right? So everything from, right, what are the methods and processes that we're using? Is it important to me to build rapport and trust in different ways? How are we making decisions, right? So you can see all kinds of different cards here that you can kind of think through. And what's really helpful about this process is very quickly you can start to organize your cards in some way that makes sense. And what I like to focus on is the things that are important are obviously where you want to put a lot of your attention. So things on the upper half of this 2x2 scale. But the stuff that is unclear, this is probably where you really need to put some energy. But things over here, the important and clear side, you might want to continue getting a little bit of clarity to move them even further down this area. But really, this is the zone where you want to put a lot of focus in. And so super simple way. Again, if you're doing it with partners, you can just have everybody write that card down on a Post-it note, and then they can move them around. If you're doing this individually, you can just simply sit here and kind of map out the pieces. Very, very quickly, you get some sense of where things lie. And then you can kind of zoom in. So let's say I've got these elements that are all popping up over here in the important and unclear area. So then I can just kind of remove all the others, and now I'm just focused on these cards, right? So if these were the things that were important to me and yet unclear, now let me start mapping through the elements. And so you can think through these in like a timeline. So in what order should they go to be developing like a clear action plan? You can use it as a brainstorm tool. So, bring a few members from your team and start to actually come up with some ideas or questions that you're holding related to all of these things. So very, very simple way to kind of map out these elements. But this map here, important versus not important, and clear versus unclear, super way to just kind of chart your first steps. And a deck of cards like this is a helpful way to just think through all the different elements. Another area that you can kind of think through is, let's say you find yourself with a lot of yellow cards up in this corner, right? The yellow cards are all related to sustaining efforts with partners. And so that might help inform you on, that's actually an area where I need to put some focus next. But you can see there's lots of different areas. So like maybe you've got cards related to chart your path, asking probing questions, naming early adopters, visualize a prototype, articulate a story, and sustain efforts with partners. So these are the 6 different categories that the cards are all broken into. And so it's a really helpful way for you to narrow in. So if you have a group of participants that you're working with, right, you can very quickly get a sense of, okay, who are the folks in the room that really need more focus early on in the process with like getting clarity on the vision and charting a path for themselves? Who are the folks that are really focused on storytelling and messaging and getting, their PR and website and social media all figured out, right? So you can very quickly kind of organize participants in your room in that way, or use it internally for you to just understand where you're at in the process. So helpful tool. Just wanted to share. Again, this is the Elements deck. You can get this on the website, or come up with your own list if you want. You can just map out a couple different elements for yourself. But if you're someone that likes to have a tangible deck of cards in front of you, feel free to consider. All right, have a good one.